All right. Take a look at Perek Lamed Gimel, Pasuk Yud Daled, 33:14. We're in Parshas Vezos Haberachah. 33:14. That's what we do, but there is no Parsha. The Parsha of this week is fasting. That's the Parsha of this week.
What do we read from on Yom Kippur?
On Yom Kippur, we read in the morning, we read about the death of the sons of Aaron. The morning, we read the death of the sons of Aaron, and in the afternoon, we read about all of the afternoon at Mincha, after a full day of intensity of Yom Kippur, we read about all the forbidden, immoral relationships. Because even at that time, even at that point, I mean, that's the great equalizer, boys. That's the one. That's the challenge of the generation. Moshe, probably just close the door over there. Thanks. Okay, 1116. 1116. Pasuk Yud Daled. Yeah, Pasuk Yud Daled. So it says like this. We're talking about Yosef. So I'm starting again from Pasuk Yud Gimel. Yosef Amar Mevoreches Hashem Artzo, his land will be very blessed. Mimeged Shemayim Yital Mitom Revesetz Tochas. The water will fertilize the earth from underneath. It'll be moist soil. Yesterday we were talking about self-control, and I forgot to mention to you. There was a guy that I met here at Ohr Somayach who was the two-time judo champion of the United States. Not me, and I passed by. I hadn't really met the guy yet. I hadn't really talked to the guy, and I happened to pass him in the hallway, and I said something about Chicago, and he just said, "Oh, great place, Chicago." He's from New York. He said, "Oh, just a great place from Chicago." He said he was visiting a friend of his in Chicago, and he was staying in the guy's apartment, and a black guy high on methadone broke into the apartment and attacked him with a screwdriver. And he was a two-time judo champion in the United States, which was a mistake on the part of the gentleman with the screwdriver. So he rendered him unconscious, and he told me that he then had a very big test, because he's all pumped up, his adrenaline is flowing, this guy just tried to kill him, and he was standing there thinking to himself, he had a big test, should I kill him or not? That was his test, should I kill the guy? So he managed to make the right decision and called the Chicago police instead. They killed him. No, he called the police. But you see, that also it all stages of life. There's self-control. There's self-control. Even anger. You know, you could get angry and keep it inside. You could get angry and maybe holler a little bit. You could get angry and break things. Even anger has to be controlled, and anger is an urge, like all other urges. Anger is an urge. Anger is an urge that has to be controlled. So that was the first thing we had said about Yosef, was Yosef's degree of self-control. Then it says like this, Umimeged tevuos shemesh. How does he translate the bounty of the sun's crops? Umimeged geresh yerachim, the bounty of the moon's yield. Now, what does the moon yield? Where does the moon grow? What grows in the moon? So take a look at Rashi. Very interesting. And that's why it's all in Torah, gentlemen. Some even agricultural facts. Take a look at the right column of Rashi, 6 lines from the bottom. We know that most crops, fruits, produce grows with the sun. The sun shines on it. The sun helps it to grow. Take a look at Gerish Yerachim. Rashi says the produce of the moon. Yesh Peiros, says Rashi, there are certain fruits or produce, Shehalavana mivashlosan, the moon actually ripens them. Ve'eluhain, these are they, kishuin v'diluin. Now kishuin, we translate in modern Hebrew, I don't know if Rashi is referring to in modern Hebrew, kishuin are zucchinis. And diluim are certain types of melons, maybe watermelons or something, which the moon actually causes them to grow. Now, Sheha'aretz megareshes ubotzia mechodesh lechodesh. Okay, whatever. I don't know exactly if the modern Hebrew translations necessarily correspond to what Rashi is referring to, but whatever it is, there are certain types of produce that grow as a result of the moon. The sun affects certain things, the moon affects certain things. Okay, but like anything else, we always have to ask, okay, why are you telling me this? The Torah is not just a book of facts. What's the message over here? And I think one of the commentaries said the message here is that each individual grows a different way, which you mentioned many times. There's no one size fits all. Some people may grow more by doing chesed. Some people may grow more by studying Torah. Some people may grow more by giving tzedakah. There are different ways of growing. This applies very much, by the way, to women. There are certain women who by nature want to be housekeepers. They want to stay home and they want to raise their kids and raise their family, and that they're going to be a better mother that way. There are other women who become better mothers because they're outside of the home a certain amount of hours a day. That means they work. I know women who work not because they need the money and not because they need the career. They work because they feel more productive. Just being outside the home, they are a better, more patient, more efficient mother because they're outside the home certain ways. So you have to know yourself how you're going to do your job best. The person who studies Torah, sometimes you need to take a break. I will grow better if I have a hobby. If I play golf a couple of times a week, then I'll have the relaxed frame of mind in order to be able to focus on Torah. Each person has to know what his area of growth is going to be. Where are you going to grow? For certain people, the growth is going to be by forcing yourself a little bit. I tend to be selfish. So what you really should do is do some volunteer work in an old age home, or do some volunteer work in a hospital, or do some volunteer work distributing food. Something that forces a person to think about other people. But no two people are going to grow the same way. And therefore the Torah says, just like crops don't grow the same way, some grow from the sun, some grow from the moon. Others, each one has its own stimulus. Each person has to know where it is that his area of growth is going to be most efficient. Okay, now take a look at the next section. Pasuk Yud Ches. V'li Zvulun Amar Smach Zvulun B'Tzeisecha. It's the bottom of page 116. V'li Zvulun Amar, Moshe says, Smach Zvulun B'Tzeisecha. Rejoice, Zvulun, when you go out. The Yisachar be'ohalecha, and Yisachar in your tents. Now, first of all, what's puzzling here is that if they know the order the tribes were born, Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. Yisachar was older than Zvulun. Yet here, Zvulun is placed before Yisachar, and Yisachar was actually older than Zvulun. So here, the idea is that there's a famous relationship called a Yisachar-Zvulun agreement. Have you ever heard of that? What is that?
It's where one of them, they basically split their lifestyles. One is making money and one is learning all that.
Correct. One makes the money, and he supports the other one so that he can learn Torah. This was originally, by the way, the destiny. You know, there's a misconception. People think Esav was born as a wicked man, and he just became a gangster, and it just went from bad to worse. If that would be true, then he doesn't deserve a punishment, because if you're a lion and you rip apart zebras, you don't deserve a punishment for lack of self-control. No lion gets punished for being inconsiderate of zebras. That's a lion's nature. That's what you're programmed to do. So what do you deserve a punishment? What do you want from me? The zebras look good. You show a lion a beautiful omelet, he's not going to eat it. But you show him a nice raw zebra, somehow that's tempting. So what do you want from the lion? What do you want from the lion? The lion is that he's just doing what he's naturally programmed. If a person is born bad and you stay bad, you don't have free choice, you don't deserve a punishment. Esav had free choice. Esav could have lived as a tzaddik. How would he have lived as a tzaddik? Well, what does the Torah describe him as when he was born? What did he do? He was a hunter. He could have channeled his physical energy into becoming the partner of Yaakov, who is the man who sits. Yaakov also described as an ish tam yoshev oholim. Yaakov sat in the tents. What tents? Yaakov sat in the tents of Torah. He studied. Esav and Yaakov had the potential for that Yisachar-Zvulun relationship. Esav blew it. So that relationship was then taken away from Esav and Yaakov, where we could have been the partnership, and it was then put into the Jewish people alone. And it was these two tribes. The tribe of Zvulun, they were merchants. They used to go out and businessmen. They would go out and they would make money. And then they would provide for Zvulun so Zvulun could have the lack of worries and concerns, financial concerns, is one could sit and learn Torah. And very much that's a husband-wife relationship that we see today in the kollel world, where the wives work and the men study Torah. And it's only a woman who chooses that. No one's arm is being twisted. A woman chooses because she feels it's a value to her that her husband should sit and learn Torah, and therefore she's willing to take on this lifestyle. And then her husband is able to sit and learn Torah, and he's able to develop till the point where could be financial concerns or whatever it is that require him to go out and then take on the responsibility. The mistake that many couples make, by the way, and I don't like hearing this, and I've voiced it publicly, is that sometimes the couple may have a money disagreement, which, by the way, is the number one cause of disagreements in marriage, is money. Well, it's not a joke. That's the number one cause of marital. What's that? Also in the frum world? Yes, the frum world is also part of the world, and yes, we are very much. Oh yeah, and it's what do you call it? It is very much obviously people who are studying Torah and live and are working on constant self-control. I would tell you there are less temper tantrums in a frum home, explosive temper tantrums. Maybe you'll just go off and say Asher Yotzar loudly or something. But there's less yelling at each other. People are working on themselves. You learn, babe, it doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we're perfect. I will not tell you that I never yelled in the house. I have yelled. I haven't yelled at my wife in a long time, but that was only in the early days. But then kids come along, so you got different targets. Then they become teenagers. They become teenagers, then you're hoarse half the time from yelling. But they're not listening to you anyway. But yeah. So it's like anything else in a frum home. In a frum world, there tends to be less of everything negative because we're working on ourselves, but we're not angels. So, but I have heard women who work and have said to their husbands when they have an argument, says, "Well, listen, I earned the money, so I could spend it." And then you're missing. If that's your attitude, then you're in the wrong. You're playing the wrong game. It doesn't work that way. You have a partnership over here. Couples should never that should never come up. This idea of separate bank accounts. Couple has separate bank accounts, and you got a much bigger problem in your marriage if you need separate bank accounts. There's something's fundamentally wrong in your marriage if you need separate bank accounts. You should be able as a couple to work out everything, meaning the husband gives in. But you should be able to work everything out. You should be able to work out everything in a marriage without having to do something drastic like having separate bank accounts. Or you have separate houses and just go eat your own supper. And that's ridiculous. So, but they have a partnership. And what ends up happening is that the agreement, an unstated agreement, it's not like but the understanding is the wife is a full partner in her husband's learning. And I want to tell you something else. Esav, who's got, in a certain way, a more difficult or more challenging job? The one who's learning or the one who's earning? Who's got the more challenging job? Often the one who's earning. Because he's out there in the world with all sorts of not necessarily the highest level people. The guy learning is in a kollel where everybody's studying Torah. That means that in the material world, to trust somebody in the material world, you have to be on a very high level to be the businessman who's going to then support the Torah learner. Zvulun and Yisachar have that agreement. Now, why is Zvulun placed before Yisachar? Because the agreement has to be, by the way, they actually make a contract. There's actually a contract drawn up that Zvulun has to, even nowadays, there are men who are people of means who will actually adopt certain guys who are learning in kollel, and they will enter into a Yisachar Zvulun relationship with them. And the businessman takes him on. And besides regular donations that you could give to Ohr Somayach, which are earmarked for the Parsha teacher, besides those donations, you could also make it give to any donation is good. But here you make a contract. I will support you while you study. And it's a contract of how much you have to give him each month, and you have to support him. Now, part of the contract is that Zvulun, when he earns the money, he has to make sure Yisachar has money before he takes care of his own needs. That's part of it. You're supporting him fully. And that's why Zvulun comes before Yisachar in this pasuk. That means that in order for it to be a proper Yisachar-Zvulun relationship, you have to support him. You're making it possible for him to learn Torah. You're not just donating money to him. You're actually, without you, he wouldn't be able to learn. And Zvulun has to make it possible for Yisachar to learn Torah. If Yisachar has the means, Zvulun could donate money. It's also always good. But in order to count that you're going to split the reward, that it has to be Zvulun goes and earns the money and then gives it to Yisachar so that Yisachar could learn Torah. But Zvulun has to be making it possible for him, number one. Number two, you can't buy it afterwards. That means you can't go up to somebody who's learned Torah and say, could I buy half your Torah? That doesn't work. The lesson is, you could turn money into Torah. You can't turn Torah into money. You can upgrade your money. You can turn your money into Torah. You can't turn Torah into money. So, by the way, the Rambam, very interesting historical fact, the Rambam had a brother, I think his name was Dovid, if I'm not mistaken. The Rambam had a brother who supported the Rambam for a while he was learning, and then his brother was lost at sea. He was a merchant, and his brother was lost at sea. And after his brother was lost at sea, that's when the Rambam then went and he needed to support himself, so he became a doctor. The Rambam then worked as a doctor. He was actually working for, the Sultan in Egypt. He was the doctor of the Sultan's court in Egypt. And but the Rambam had support up until that point. So that's number one. Number two, there's this question of how do they divide the reward? What does it mean that the Yisachar and Zvulun divide the reward? So there's what's that? It's 50. Is it 50-50 or is it 100-100? That means how are you dividing the reward? There are different opinions among the commentaries. Well, there's 100%. There's there are 100 pieces of reward for studying Torah. You get 50 and I get 50. Or do we regard it as a flame? If I have a fire and you take some of my fire, I didn't lose anything from my fire. My fire is still there. You just lit something else, and now you have a fire. We both have 100% fire. So Torah is spiritual. Torah is a fire. We learned that Torah is a fire. So the reward for Torah is a spiritual reward. Can you take away my spiritual reward? That you can't take. So some say yes. I think the Chazon Ish, if I'm not mistaken, says it's 50-50. You're actually splitting 50-50. But other commentators say no. It's 100-100 split. It's 100-100 split because there's no limit to the reward.
That's not fair then, though, because this one the one who's giving the money, he's losing part of his pay. He's losing half of his paycheck, right?
He's losing half of his paycheck and he's losing half of his reward.
But he's not losing half.
You mean if it's 100-100? But he's learning. He's spending his time learning. Zwollen's out there. Each one is doing their job. He's got a job and he's got a job. Try learning full time, then you'll talk. Try learning full time. I've done a number of things in my life, gentlemen. The most challenging and demanding and stamina draining thing that I've ever done in my life is studying in Kolo. That was the most difficult thing, full-time Torah study, because you're not making money. There's no prestige in it. You're using your mind all day, and this includes when you have a head cold, or if you were up with your kids in the middle of the night and you got to get up and just use mental exercise all day. It's extremely draining, extremely demanding, and it's not just the studying of those hours in Kolo. The understanding of a full-time Torah learner is that when it's not necessary for you to do something else, you don't need to be eating, and you don't need to be shopping for Shabbos, and you don't need to be taking care of the kids in the middle of the night. If you're not doing, there isn't something else that you have to be doing. What you're doing is you're studying Torah, and it's not a 9 to 5, and it's not even a 9 to 9. You know what a Kolo schedule? These guys go to Kolo. My son-in-laws and the other guys who go to Kolo. My son. These guys get up in the morning. They go off to the Mir Yeshiva. They study from 9 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. They have a short break. They study from 3 till 7, and they come home, eat a supper. I know guys who eat supper for 45 minutes, and they're out of the house till 12 o'clock at night, studying some more. It's the most demanding thing that I've ever done. It's everything else pales in comparison to that. It's extremely satisfying if you're doing it properly, but it is extremely, extremely demanding. And you have to often you have to generate your own motivation. It's a very, very challenging. Zvulun, it's not easy to be a merchant, but he's buying something. According to you, anything that you buy from somebody else, so you're losing out because you're paying him. Right? You're buying something from him. You're buying the right to have 100% of that reward. Okay, he's left with 100%, but you
He gets
bought,
the full 100%.
you
So
get
that's
the full
whatever
100% and you get a full
whatever
100%.
he's getting, he's getting.
Right. That's, however, there's one difference according to the commentaries. That's in the ultimate reward. There is another aspect of the benefits of Torah which they do not share. And that would be no different than, let's say, somebody would ask me, let's say somebody would tell me, I want you and Mike to make a partnership to finish that entire plate of that entire steak. And he's going to pay us both to knock off the steak. And me and Mike go into the room and Mike says, I'm not really hungry right now. I say, Mike, is it okay if I eat the whole thing? You get 50% of the money, but I'll eat the whole thing. Mike says, fine. So I pay him. We split the reward. We split the payment. But who ate the steak? I have the satisfaction of the steak. That Yisachar does not have. That Zvulun doesn't have. That only Yisachar has. Only Yisachar has the actual benefit in this world of actually the Torah itself. The reward in the world to come, that they're going to split. But that the Torah itself and what the Torah does to a person, that Zvulun doesn't have. That only Yisachar has. Okay? Now, one of the commentaries says like this. It's tongue in cheek, but it's not so tongue in cheek. First of all, Vilizvulun Amar. Just one second. Where is it? Vilizvulun Amar Smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha. Rejoice, Zvulun, when you go out. The Yisachar be'olacha. Yisachar is in the tents of Torah. Now, what's the difference between a tent and a home? What do you say what's that? Excellent. That means Yisachar, who's the Torah learner, how does he view this world? Why is it called the tents of Torah? Why isn't it called the homes of Torah? Because the Yisachars of the world have a relationship with this world. They understand that the world is temporal. The world's temporary. Nobody makes it out of here. Nobody, there's a saying, at the end of the game, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. Nobody makes it out of here vertical. Everybody goes out horizontal. Some people go out, Nasrallah, I don't know exactly what position, but other people most go out horizontal. So Yisachar views the Torah helps him that he has that perspective of seeing the world as a tent. And if you see the world as a tent, then your relationship with the world, you know what the definition of liberty is? Liberty is freedom from doing those things that we don't want to do, to becoming slaves to the things that we do want to do. That's what liberty really is. We are free from the oppression of the English in order to become slaves to the American materialism. And so a person becomes slaves to the materialism, that means you're viewing this world as a permanent. They're like, this is it. Yisachar has the perspective of viewing it as a tent. Now I want to ask you guys, tell me and be honest, be straight. Listen, a couple days before Yom Kippur, you can't tell any lies. What do you think when you guys see, like these yeshiva guys, the from Kollel guys or yeshiva guys? What's your impression of these people as far as their worldly knowledge? Give it to me straight, boys.
They can't even use maps.
Know more than I know.
They don't have that smart.
They can't even.
They don't have maps.
What do you think? And what do you think? How connected are they to worldly pursuits? Very little. They don't check the news.
They're oblivious to the physical worlds, but they're extremely well. Like I would go and talk to one of these people you're talking about anything.
Interesting.
Related or spiritual. Like I'll ask them.
What about just general knowledge related?
Absolutely zero. Like they don't even know how to cross the street properly.
Okay. They had it good. I'm glad. That's what I wanted to hear. That's what I wanted. That is generally the view of the religious. A bunch of clones dressed in black, who are turtles in a shell and know nothing about what's going on in the world. Okay. One second. Just 1 second. Okay. All right. What you said. I'm glad you said the way you said it. So, can I ask you guys a question? What's the name? If you know it, don't say it. What's the name? If you know it, don't say it. Just raise your hand if you know the answer. What's the full name of the president of China? If you know it, don't say. Just raise your hand if you know it. Oh, not bad. How many? Let's see those hands again. And the rest of you don't know the name. I don't even know. Is it called a president or a premier? I don't even know what he's called. Whatever, king. I'm not sure what he's called. You don't know the name of the president of the biggest country in the world? Sorry, what's good? What's the name of the president of India? Oh, yeah, all right. Those who know, raise your hands. Shkoyach. Oh, look at that. We're down to 3. Yeah, I've done this. You know why I do this? Because people say, oh, you're religious. You're so unaware. You don't know what's going on in the world. You're unaware? I'm unaware? You don't know the name of the president of the biggest country in the world, and I'm the one who's unaware? You're also aware of, you're unaware of Baba Kama. Who? No, Baba Kama's from Japan. No, who? Right, well, who? What do you mean unaware? The answer is that the frum guys that you see, they may not be aware of the things you're aware of. They're aware of a lot of things you're not aware of, number one. Number two, if you read a newspaper and they read a newspaper, I guarantee you they're going to see a lot more between the lines than you are. You're going to read a newspaper and say, oh, Biden's upset with Netanyahu. Ooh. And most people read it like an emotional cucumber. Ooh. Right? Whereas a guy who's studied Torah reads it and says, I don't know that he ever said it. And if he did say it, he's putting on a show. And if he's putting on a show, they're not telling us anyway what's behind. And all of a sudden you see a lot more. You see a lot more. These are the last thing that these people are. They may not be aware because they don't know the facts. But all they have to do is hear a person who's studying Torah is so sharp, becomes so sharp, with you just throw him one sentence and he's already can basically develop the whole picture. So the commentaries say tongue in cheek. Do you know that guys who learn in yeshiva then go to law school? Do you know they clean up in law school? They clean up because they've been doing this their whole life. Sometimes they're so good that the professors in law school can't follow them. They don't agree with them simply because this guy's more logical than the professor. So the one of the commentaries says tongue in cheek. V'li Zvulun amar smach Zvulun b'tzeisecha. Rejoice, Zvulun, when you go out. You know what you should rejoice about? The Yisachar ba'alecha. Just be happy that those guys are in yeshiva learning Torah, not competing with you in business. Because if they were competing with you in business, they'd clean you out. That's how sharp they are. That's tongue in cheek, but there's a tremendous amount of truth to that. And when you get to meet, how many times it's happened in Israel, you do something nice to some secular person, and they'll say to you, I've had it said to me, and dozens of others have had it of Haredis, ultra-Orthodox stone-throwing Haredis have had an interaction where they said they helped somebody get his car started, or they something happened, and the secular Jew says, boy, if all the Haredis would be like you, so it'd be a much better place. And you know what the correct response is? They are like me. You just haven't met them. You're just looking at the image. Oh, there goes the portable payas guy. And you're the moving payas machine. You don't know the guy. All he is a fur hat with payas, and he probably speaks Yiddish, and he says Tehillim all day. You really think so? You really think so? They're human beings. That's why you asked me. They're completely. What was the word you used, Shai? Completely oblivious to the physical world? Absolutely not. There's nobody on my block who doesn't have a microwave oven, except us. Most people on my block have cars. They're not oblivious to the physical world. And by the way, they have good food in the house. Those who can afford it. They have good food. They're not oblivious to the physical world. They may not be enamored with the physical world. They may not be dominated by the physical world, but we live in a physical world. Of course we have to live in a physical world. What were you going to say, Shai?
So I was actually going to ask if, when I mentioned it, I meant more like when they're walking, when they're in, not like, obviously what you're talking about is more, but are you allowed to be in the know and still be?
Well, why not? I'm in the know. Yes. I'm in the know. You could ask Sam. I just told him Kansas City's 5-0. What's more important than knowing that? I'd rather know about Patrick Mahomes than the premier of China. Patrick Mahomes affects my life. I got money on that. No, I just get it. Everybody, you're allowed to be in the know, not be dominated by the know, and don't be fooled by the know. As long as the know's in there, everybody needs an outlet. Everybody needs that. When I was studying in Kollel, it was a certain point. It was very intense. At a certain point, I said to my wife, I need an outlet. I can't do this. I can't do this all day. And I need an outlet, either sports or politics. So my wife says, I hate politics. Definitely sports. gave me permission. Listen, what could be better? Turn the Cookie Monster loose in the Salerno factory. So so she said definitely sports. So for a certain period of time, we would get sports. Somebody had Sports Illustrated. We would get it. My wife would censor the poopy pictures, and then I would get to read Sports Illustrated. Not too much. I didn't have a chavrusa. And I could, if it was up to me, I would start a sports call. But I would just, like on a Saturday night for a half hour, get to read that sort of thing. Now, each person has to know what your outlet is. Some people have, I got to play some music. Other people have an outlet, they got to go for a walk. You can't. We're not machines. We're not machines. We're human beings. The trick is knowing the difference between what you need and what you want. That's the trick. I need a little bit of relaxation. I want lots of relaxation. How much do you need and how much do you want? That's why later in life, when you get married, that's where your wife really is going to be the major benefit, or one of the major benefits. She will know what you need. You know what you want. And she understands really what you need. She knows when you could push yourself, and she knows that you could do a little better than that. And that's why it says she's an Ezer Kenegdo. When it describes the wife, she's a helpmate opposite him. Because sometimes she helps him by opposing him. And you could do a little better than that. You do a little better than that. Sometimes you say, you know what, you need to relax. And if your wife says you need to relax, then you really need to relax. That means the best thing any man could hear is that your wife feels you're working hard. Your wife should feel you're working, you need to relax a little bit. Is somebody who's not married, then you gotta gauge that yourself. But it's a very tricky language of what you need away. But everybody needs an outlet. Everybody needs an outlet. So yes, there's nothing wrong with being aware, and quite the contrary. We should be aware a certain amount. You don't need to know every detail and read every silly editorial written by some feminist in the New York Times who's anti-Israel. That you don't need to do. You don't have to read every fool who picked up a pen. Just because people know how to write doesn't mean they know how to think. He knows how to write. He writes well. Doesn't mean he's an expert. Doesn't mean what he's saying has any merit to it. So, but facts, there's nothing wrong with knowing the facts. And sometimes it's enjoyable. Sometimes here the exploding pagers. It's a good story. It's a fun story to read about. How did they do it? The intrigue. How do they? It's interesting. There's nothing. But you have to know, where is that fine line right now? Is that, and certainly is this the time for it? Right? It's not in shul. You should be doing it while you're in shul. And you should be doing it when you're in the middle of having a study session. That's not the time for it. But everybody has that line. Okay. One more thought. Yes, please.
There's such thing as too far. Like people who don't speak English, or people who live at New Square, live off good steps. Is that where's the line? Where is it too far?
Too far is the line where the Torah says it's something inappropriate. If a person feels that I want to live on food stamps, the government's giving me food stamps, that gives all other ethnic groups who don't work food stamps, and it's available and it's not illegal, and by doing this, I'm able to study more Torah. I don't know what's wrong with that. And maybe somebody feels it rubs me wrong. It rubs me wrong to live on government handouts. Okay, that's your own personal value. We don't live on personal values. We live on Torah values. You have a right to make your own personal value. I say, listen, I'm just not going to live on food stamps. But as long as it's not illegal, and as long as you qualify based on the government standards, and you're not breaking the halacha, and this is what allows you to study Torah, that means Hashem has given you a gift. They take the. What's that?
If you bribe the politicians,
Bribery is forbidden.
not with money necessarily, but the right to say, if you do a certain thing, everyone in my community will vote for you.
If it's something that is determined to be against the Torah, then you can't do it. If it's something that's not against the Torah, then you could do it. And if anybody wants to try to bribe me, well, I'm susceptible. Yeah, so go ahead. Put the gadgets just under the table. Again, the rule is that it needs a halachic authority to determine. That's an excellent question you're asking. Is telling a politician, if you do this and that, we will vote for you? Probably that's a bribe if it means the politician doing something illegal. If the politician has a policy, that's how all politics works. How do they determine their policies? They determine their policies based on why is Donald Trump going to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, what do you call it? If they got religious overnight? That's he's obviously pandering to the religious community. Obviously, that's how he thinks is going to impress people. Okay, I got nothing against Donald Trump for doing that because they all do it. Whether we should do it or not, that's to be determined by the Torah. One more point, gentlemen. One more point. If you take a look on page 1118. Ulegad Amar, second line from the top. To the tribe of Gad, he said, Baruch Marchiv Gad. How does he translate it? Blessed is he who broadens God. Kilavi Shachin, he lies down like a lion. Here's and this is the turn of phrase I want to get to. Vitaraf zeroa of kod. And he, how does he translate it? Tearing off arm and even head. Now, what does that mean? And what does it mean? He lies like he crouches like a lion. So the commentaries say the Gemara says the tribe of Gad were fierce warriors, and when they went out to war, you could tell the people. You know, war in the old days wasn't fought with computers. War in the old days was fought with swords and clubs and bows and arrows, and it was very personal. The victim, normally when somebody was killed at war, what you tried to do is you tried to chop their head off. That was the most fast and most efficient way of killing people. The tribe of Gad was unique in that you could tell the victims that they had slain because they had a certain chop where they chopped the head and the shoulders at one shot. It was like chop the head and the shoulders and then obviously started a shampoo company. But it was called the head and shoulders chop. Now I want to ask you something. Picture a guy killing somebody with that kind of chop, a head and shoulders chop. Well, how do you envision it? How would what?
Strong.
Very strong. To be able to do it is very strong. But picture the actual chop itself. What does the chop look like? He's just coming down like this on an angle. Notice that it doesn't say that. It says Zroa af kod, the arm and then the head. The arm, now that's unique. You know, you come to the enemy, you give him the fake. You know, you fake you're going high and the guy goes like this, great. And then you come up underneath and chop off the head and the arm, the head and the shoulder head chop, you know, an upward chop. Why does the Torah put it? Should have said that the head and the shoulder. It says the shoulder and the head. That's a tribe of God. It goes the shoulder and the head. Okay, the answer is twofold. Now let's stay with this. We put on tefillin. Which tefillin goes on first? The shalyad goes on first. Then the head. So there's something about the chop, the Gad head, shoulder head chop, which seems to have some connection to tefillin. What's the connection to tefillin? And the answer is, who went to war for the Jewish people? The Gemara says only the tzaddikim. If a person had a sin that he knew that he did, he had the right to back out. They would assemble the entire military would assemble, those who are potential warriors, and then they would make an announcement. Anybody who has built a house and has not lived in the house for the year, anybody who's planted a vineyard and has not reaped the benefits of the vineyard, you have the right to leave the battlefront. Anybody who's gotten married and has not been married for a year, you have the right to leave the battlefront. You have to stay home with your wife and do battle there. Anybody who has, you're allowed to back away from you leave the battlefront. Then he'd say anybody who's done an avera gets to go home. Why? Because the person's nervous. I'm going out to war. I may have this divine prosecution hovering over me because of my avera. I don't want to go out to the battlefront where you're susceptible. And it says that in a time of danger, there is more prosecution against the person. And if a person feels, well, listen, I did this avera, I better back off. You know, this isn't for me. And the reason they made the first three announcements is so that nobody knows why I'm backing off. It could be very embarrassing. Hey, Kaplan, you chicken, where are you going? Well, I had that incident with the shoplifting, and I don't want to, and it could be very embarrassing. So they say, well, my vineyard, the old vineyard. Yeah, I got the vineyard. I built a house recently. So they give you the fallback, the excuse, so that it can be hidden, so you won't be embarrassed. But you get to back off. If I got the avera, I'm too nervous. Says the Gemara, what would constitute an avera, which a person it should be nervous enough about that you're going to back away from the battlefront? What would constitute an avera? You know what the Gemara says? Somebody who talks between putting on their arm tefillin and their head tefillin. There's another opinion that you put on in the wrong order. Now, on the list of, let's face it, gentlemen, on the list of major averas, how bad is it to talk between arm tefillin and head tefillin? You're not allowed to do it. It's an avera. You're not allowed to do it. But, compared to idol worship, immorality, murder, stealing, it's probably on a lower level. Yet, it's enough to excuse you from the battlefront. That means if the tribe of Gad went out to the battlefront, that means that even a slight avera, like arm, head, they didn't do. And therefore, their chop begins with the arm and the head in the same order as the tefillin. Because it's a sign that they were on the level to go to war, because even a minor misdeed, a minor misstep, like talking between the shalyat and the soros, that they didn't do. All right.